Lenny.
Yes.
Hey, buddy. I'm
How's it going?
Josh. You are surrounded. This is actually an intervention for you.
I know. I have too many records. I understand. I won't buy another record at least for the next 20 minutes.
I
Yeah,
mean, this has been like, what a fun record to really dig into. And what was really cool about it was, we've been doing this podcast, gosh, man, like almost 5.5 years.
jeez.
And this record came up, and Morty, who I worked with, has helped me write the show, has basically been my shaman taking me through every record. Oh, and by the way, just so we do it, that's Jeremiah up in the corner with the man bun, just so you know.
Hey,
There's
Oh
Lenny.
yeah, yo,
you're like,
Jeremiah.
just so you're like, wait, do I
Are you a
really see that
bullfrog?
guy?
Not the ghost of
But
rock past.
but the moral of it was, the second we had this record coming up, Morty reached out to me and said, you need to have Lenny on. This is your baby. This is your darling. You spent the time, the effort. And so I mean, thank you just from the bottom of all of our hearts for coming
Well,
on and
thank
talking
you.
about this today.
Cool. Well, I'm happy to talk about it. The fact that this strange compilation that I put together more than half a century ago has lived on into the future kind of fills me with a sense of wonder and slight bewilderment. But it obviously speaks to a lot of people who recognize that it's about the heart and soul of rock and roll. The yearning and the desire and the wanting to plug into an amplifier or play a guitar to understand who you are and who you can become.
It's really cool because we've been doing this for so long, where we've had the members of about, I'd say like 8 or 9 albums that have been on here. We've had Billy Gibbons talk about ZZ Top. We had Jerry Harrison talking about Talking Heads, more songs about buildings and food. We've had Mike Mills from REM talking about Automatic for the People. So
You
this
had
is
Otis Williams on talking about the Temptations.
yeah, we had one of the original members of the Temptations. I mean, dude, this is like, it's all, which is so cool. I think that's kind of why this show rules, because we have so many people all chipping into the pot. We're all adding to the jambalaya and bringing different ingredients and making it sweet. But this is really cool to have the architect and creator of this record. Morty, I mean, how do you guys know each other? And like, how did this go?
So here's the crazy thing. Well, he knows none of this part, but so what happens is there's this collection called the Wild Honey Foundation. First of all, a
Right.
big shout out to David Jenkins, who is he's the bass
Amen.
player. Yeah, Kibitz at the Kibitz Room on Tuesday nights at Canners that we talked about all the time when we're on here. So what happened was they do this autism research. It's a nonprofit, the Wild Honey Foundation. They raise money and they do these shows, both in the backyard. It's David Jenkins, Paul Rock, Andrew Sandoval, who is the foremost authority on the Monkees, and their manager, and my lawyer, Michael Ackerman. And so they put this thing together. I know, right? A Jewish guy with a lawyer. So they put this thing together, and they do these tribute concerts pretty much every year up until COVID, and then they've gotten back into it, and they'll do 2 albums by the Beatles, a whole collection of the band, or the Buffalo Springfield, or all this stuff. So last year they said, hey, we're doing another one. Jenkins goes, we're doing another one. And we all get excited. Oh, can we be a part of it? And he goes, well, wait a minute. It's a little different. We're collaborating to do the Nuggets, to do the Nugget show. And everyone's like, oh my God, that's fantastic. And he goes, however, we're not in charge of this one. Lenny Kaye is actually curating and putting it together. And I'm like, well, that's cool. I'll just come to watch. That's out of sight. And then at the last minute, he goes, hey, the band All Day Sucker, hey, do you guys want to do one of the songs? Lenny says, it's cool. And I go, what song are we doing? And he goes, how about 96 Tears? And I go, that's not on the Nuggets comp. In fact, that's like the only number one for pretty much
But it's
any of
now on
these.
volume 2 of Nuggets.
Yes, it was re-released, and we'll get into, I'm sure you'll get into like how you got that stuff. So I'm on stage at the show. I only meet Lenny in passing, but I got to go to rehearsal. And this show is filled with like some of the original members of these bands. And on top of it, like the stalwarts of Wild Honey, some of the Bangles and the 3 O'Clock, and these incredible artists. and I'm on stage. You'll dig this, Josh.
Yeah.
And at one point, I bring my daughter Beatrix, and she's standing on like stage left, and I'm up there singing. And you know, you look to the sides of the stage every now and then. I look to one side, and I see Lenny standing there, and I'm going, "Oh, great, fucking here's the guy." And he's watching me do this thing. So to calm myself,
So
I look
critical.
over to where
So critical.
I look over to see my daughter. Like I'm going to ground myself. And standing next to my daughter, and this is how I remember it, in all white, holding his American Strat is Wayne Kramer. And I go,
No
well, that made
shit.
me feel, that makes me less nervous,
Yeah.
you know. And sadly, we lost him last year. But, you know, for a lot of us, we got to actually meet him and see him. I mean, I know we saw him with Gang of Four, right? Or who did we see him
Yeah,
with?
we did. But something really cool that Jeremiah, I think you just found out about, is that Joel Gallen, who does all the video, he's the director for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame performances and the HBO thing, he actually produced the goddamn Comedy Jam TV show, reached out and they got the perfect quote from Kim Thale from Soundgarden from our episode about MC5,
We
Kick
done
Out the
two of them.
Jams.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they pulled in the big like package that's coming out at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. They're going to be using a clip of me and Kim and him saying like, I forget, it's just a short line, but
That's
it's like,
beautiful.
yeah, it's rad, dude. It's rad. And then I was like, dude, you know, I vote on him. Can I come? And he's like, I'm like, because I'll be here in New York. He goes, they're in Cleveland. I go, yeah, I'm not going to that. Like, I'm good, dude. Don't
Oh,
worry.
you'll
I'm not
go to
going
England for Oasis, but you won't go to Cleveland for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
yeah, no, I probably will. And dude, now I will. Like, you know, I have so much free time. All right.
We want to let you get it. I'm going to do one
Yeah.
quick sidebar to put this into context in the big picture. And as we are 6 short of a minion, like all good rock and roll stories, this starts with a nice Jewish boy, right? You'll like this. This guy's originally from Baltimore, Maryland. There's a guy
Nice.
named Bob Plotkin who from Baltimore, Maryland, presumably he makes his mother swell with pride because he becomes a nice big shot lawyer in New York. But he's friends with a guy named Al Trommers, and they're both avid record collectors. They, I guess Al, who's known as Broadway Al, talks Bob into opening a record shop. So they originally open a record shop in the Village, right on Bleecker, 149 Bleecker Street. And he nicknames him. He says, well, I'm Broadway Al. How about your Bleecker Bob? So he names this guy Bleecker Bob. They're there. Then they move in the early 70s to McDougal near 8th. And that's where this episode really starts. And then just to add this, because I know this is where Lenny comes in, but just so you guys know, I'm from Los Angeles. There was a store on Melrose called Bleecker Bob's for a while. I got to meet Bob when he would come out here periodically, and he was famous for his attitude. I think that people could say he and Al split up in the early 80s. And they moved down to, you'll dig this, Josh. They moved down to 118 West 3rd.
Right by
The
the
old
Comedy
Night
Cellar.
Owl, the old Night Owl Cafe, the famous folk club. They took over the site, and you said that right by Comedy Cellar now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
right by
so
it,
it's
like literally.
still these Village, mainstays. When we would go and tour New York, as I'm sure everybody in New York, Bleecker Bob's was like a landmark. It was a destination place. Like you were there, and they're like the one on Melrose. I had Rhino Records on Westwood Boulevard, but everybody in their own little town. This is pre-internet. I just want to talk about the communal aspect of how amazing it was that you would go into one of these shops and it would be stuff you never heard on the radio, you never got to see anywhere. They had the cash register with all the stickers on it, and they had the guys behind the counter saying, yeah, that sucks. Here's what you really want to listen to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's high fidelity.
And this, yeah, exactly. And this brings us to when it was Village Oldies was the name of the store. And this brings us to Lenny Kaye in the 70s. And then you can take over from there because you were one of those historians.
Well, I wasn't exactly LaGuardia Len, but I would come into Village Oldies all the time and buy records, and Bob would give me a hard time for at least 10 minutes. What do you know about music? But if you just weathered his storm for that 10 minutes, he really had a heart of gold. And it was a great store. One day I'm in there, plowing through the stacks, and he says, "Why don't you work here? You're always in here." So I thought, sure. So he hires me, I guess it was probably 1970, uh, to work 6 days a week, in the afternoons from 12 to 6, or in the evening, at night from 6 to midnight, $10 a shift. But I like to say all the records I could filch. And I was just, I was just working there. I was also working as a rock journalist at the time. And
Would that be Cream? Like some of the magazines?
no, this was pre-Cream. I was
Oh,
working
wow.
for a magazine called Changes. I was the music editor of Cavalier, which was a skin magazine, kind of. There was Playboy and Penthouse, and then Cavalier in
None
terms
of
of
us are
trying
familiar with those.
yeah, I mean, trying to appeal to a demographic that wasn't just not interested in the centerfold, even though, but, you'd have kind of classy articles, and I was the music editor, so I would write a monthly column for them. And, I was just hanging around, New York City, being mostly a rock writer and a record store geek. And, I really loved my time at Village Oldies late at night on Saturday, especially when I got the offer from Jack Holzman to do an album of kind of overlooked and under the radar tracks from the 1960s. And he was very vague about what he had in mind.
How did he
And
find you?
there was an article in Esquire in the summer of '70 where they did the heavy 100 of the music business, and I was just kind of a newly minted rock writer, and Danny Fields and the Australian journalist Lillian Roxon were kind of advising them, and so I was the token rock critic on there, because and I covered that Velvet Underground, MC5, Stooges. Avant Beat for mostly a magazine called Jazz and Pop. And, so I'm in this thing, and Jack Holzman liked rock critics. Obviously his label was very, a smart label. I mean, they had the Doors, they had Tim Buckley, they had all manner of, intelligent rockers and folkers. And so he called me up one day and asked me if I would be an independent talent scout for him. In the end, they never were appreciative of what I tried to bring them. I tried them to keep the Stooges to make a third album. I tried to get them to release the Stalk Forest album, which the group that became Blue Oyster Cult.
Oh, wow.
And I did turn down Hall and Oates and things like that.
Uh-oh.
I mean, I was kind of on the avant wing of rock and roll. But he had this idea for an album called Nuggets, and he was really vague about it. One of his suggestions was a group called Serpent Power, which has a 12-minute track called Endless Tunnel, which is fantastic, but, it would take up an entire side of an album. He made a suggestion of a Little Anthony and the Imperials track from their psychedelic record. He didn't really know. It was like 3 or 4 suggestions. And he handed me the project and told me to assemble a list. And at the time, I was working in Village Oldies. I had been in what would be called garage bands in the 1960s. I had a group called The Zoo out of Central Jersey playing the fraternity circuit and the local clubs. And so, I kind of grew up with this music. And it struck me, though, more subliminally than anything else, that this was kind of what I called a transition period from the time of pretty abrupt hit singles manufactured by the music business through groups that were very much influenced by the British invasion on their way to becoming full-fledged progressive rockers, a la the Grateful Dead or, the San Francisco bands. But there seemed to be a little window in a time that, I kind of like those times when things are very blurry, that people are starting to gather energy, that there's a whole palette of new sounds and technologies, and they're getting very experimental, but they don't know what it is. I mean, now we call it garage rock, and yeah, that's a genre, fuzz tone and a yowling lead singer and, kind of punkish lyrics. But at the time, and especially on my record, I just basically gathered a bunch of songs that subliminally fit together. I'd be at Village Oldies on a Saturday night. I'd be having a couple beers. I'd be pulling records from the racks and kind of spinning them for my own amusement. There were some rare records that I liked. There was some that didn't seem to fit a genre. And if you listen to my original nuggets, it really is all over the place. It's not like these, back from the graves and pebbles and boulders, which are very specifically garage rock. I mean, on my album, I had like a group like Sagittarius, which was
Right.
symphonic rock, a la the Beach Boys. I had the Blues Project, which really were not a garage band by any means. I had some weird single, the Strangeloves. They were a production team, who were like kind of jumping on the bandwagon of the.
We have a bunch of stuff on here for that.
I mean, it's
songs,
really,
yeah.
it was really like I gathered probably 40 or 50 songs, put them in a list, gave it to them. And then about 2 months after I did that, Elektra, Jack said, well, we're not really agreeing on anything you're bringing us and blah, blah, blah. So, we had a nice run. So I said, okay. And about 2 months later, I get a call from Elektra's legal department saying, we have the rights to such and such, however many songs. What do we do with them? And I thought, whoa, this thing is still together. Jack had this idea. He called it Nuggets, which I really like. I wanted to call it Rockin' and Reelin' USA, which thank God he didn't listen to.
Yeah, dude.
Dude,
God, Nuggets rules.
Nuggets,
dude. Nuggets,
it had a
dude.
great sense of logo. You look at Elektra Records.
Dude, by the way, I'm wearing my, I didn't even realize it. I'm wearing my Nuggets jersey.
Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
I didn't even think about that. What the
Unintentional.
fuck, dude? I swear to God, I did not put two and two together to do that.
Well,
Clip
that's
it,
good.
put it on Instagram.
But I got to hand it to Jack. He didn't try to interfere with my choices. He didn't say, well, maybe you should do this. Maybe you should do this. Maybe you should do that. He just let it happen. He had that thing, which to me is a great record company president, where if he trusted you, I mean, it was originally supposed to be a single album. I made it a double album. I turned down 3 covers until I got that marvelous Abe Gervin cover with the psychedelics coming out of the radio.
Yeah, you should put it up there because it's gorgeous.
I mean, yeah, it really is. Which it's funny that, I mean, I may be stepping on what you're about to say, but it's like we're going about the music that you chose, and you're calling it the first of the psychedelic era. But I that is the exact opposite of what I thought psychedelic was going to be. I thought it was going to be all incense peppermints. And and instead it's like
same time frame, I have to say.
Yeah, sure, but you're getting like, baby, please don't go. Like that's just good.
Well, that's why I called it the first psychedelic era, because to me the second one was when the hallucinogens took hold, and you had 12-minute excursions, which I'm all for. But to me it was a period where there was one foot still in the 3-minute hit single. And yet people were experimenting all over the place and coming up with these really bizarre records. My 2
Who came
role
up with
models,
Artyfacts out of curiosity? Who came up with the Artyfacts?
Oh, I did,
Okay,
like
that
the
was
birds.
cute.
Okay,
That was cute. I like that.
And you smoke enough pot, you come up with anything. I mean, they just let me do anything. My 2 role models, and it's kind of a good one, is one of them was like those late night hit records where you get like 15 for $4, and you send into something, kind of hits. I remember when I was a kid, they had these Mr. Maestro records with motorcycle hoodlums on the cover, and you get 12 of hits from last year's hit parade, and it's quite value for money. But I also have an academic streak, and I was really into Yazoo Blues records, labeled by Nick Pearls, Blues of Southeastern Georgia, 1933 to 1937. And those were kind of melding those 2 consciousnesses together. I was able to come up with a record that told a story of a moment in time, and also was fun to listen to. I wasn't about to make an academic study of garage rock. I wanted it to be fun to listen to. And, in the end, if I would have known, A, I'd be talking about it 50 years later, and B, that it was supposed to be about garage rock, I would have screwed it up. No doubt about it. I wouldn't have put some weird wild card things on there that just were my favorite songs that I slid under the wire.
Yeah.
I listen to it now and and I also sometimes avoided a hit. I chose Oh Yeah by the Shadows of Night because Gloria was the hit. And,
Right.
my brief from Jack was to kind of dig deep tracks, they call them now, so I instead of We Ain't Got Nothing Yet by the Blues Magoos, which is a classic, I took their version of Tobacco Road because I remember when I listened to it the first time and it goes up a key somewhere in the middle of this psychedelic middle, my head blew off. Um, I was just having fun with it because I never thought it would come out,
Wow.
but Elektra stayed the course with me. They just let me have a beautiful package. I wrote liner notes and, again, those liner notes at a time when you didn't know that much about, I'd have no idea who the Magic Mushrooms is. Now you could go on the internet, find out all the names, how they got together, more details than but a lot of it I didn't know who these groups were. There wasn't an underground of aficionados to kind of explain those larger subtexts to you. And and really in the end, I was first out of the gate. Everyone
Yeah.
says, "Oh, what a great record!" Well, A, I had the pick of the litter, and B, I was, I had the opportunity to present this. I didn't, I didn't make any of this music. I was just a total fan of it, but going by some weird instinct and putting together what I like and Elektra going along with me every step of the way, all of a sudden in October of 1972, I have this beautiful record in my hand. And, in the end, I can't believe it. And now when looking at it, I really can't believe it that I had such license to to follow my instincts. It
Did
was a
Bob
great.
let you sell it at the store? I mean, was it like, hey,
Oh yeah,
here's the
no,
guy
no,
that did it?
no. Bob was all about that. I mentioned him in the liner notes, him and Bleecker Bob. I
Ah.
thanked him for the time behind the counter. Um, I mean, but again, it came out. Rock writers liked it, got some good reviews, and then disappeared. You
You
know,
think, wait, hold on. Can I say this? A little side, a little interjection, because we always talk about it because, the lists are bullshit, but, it's a good thing to go off of. And that's
huh,
why we chose the Rolling Stone because me and my buddy Angelo used to talk about it. The moral of this is, dude, this has been on every list from the Rolling Stone 500 greatest album list. It even made the 2020 re-rank. So it's been in 2003. It came in at 196. It stayed there, which I think is the number we're at today for 2012. And then even at the 2020 list, it's number 405. So obviously
who
you put
knew?
together, I mean, who knew when you were fucking making it? But dude, you put together, I'm telling you,
Well, thank you.
I,
I
more,
mean,
Morty,
I,
I texted you, or I think I
I'll take
called you
that
the
free
second.
beer.
I'll get you a free beer. I'll get you some. You come over
If
for
you
some
guys are
fruit
both in New
fly.
York, or I don't know if
Oh
you're in
yeah,
New York,
come to
but
the Comedy Cellar, dude. Come to this Comedy Cellar to see me perform, and I'll take care of your whole check.
Okay.
Your
Hey,
friends.
do
We'll
any knock
reminisce.
knock
We'll meet.
jokes?
I do. It's all. I'm the nation's top knock knock joke,
Okay, good,
singing
good.
knock knock. But what I'm saying, Morty, remember, I called you and went, dude, Nuggets rules
yeah,
immediately. This
It's
is
just,
this is one of
it's a great, it's a bunch of great. I mean, you can talk about garage rock all you want, and I have, and yeah, it is a really central impulse for somebody, especially in the 1960s. And I speak for myself, who need, I was horrible at sports and not even that good of a student. But when I picked up that guitar, I had a desire to 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 be something with it. The fact that I actually was able to do something with it over the next, is amazing to me. I would have learned to read music, but the fact is that I just there Nuggets really, it's not about garage rock. It's about great records. Because I'm at any random record fair, probably more than I need to be, and someone will come up to me and say, "Dude, I have a great garage rock record. You should listen to." And we go over to his thing and we listen to it, and I think, yeah, that's a great garage rock record. It's got all those things that we like about garage. Snarling lead vocal and da 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 da. You know, but is it a great record? And that to me, for whatever I did, all of those records on Nuggets are great records. Forget the genre, and you could make a Nuggets out of it. I was always been trying to do a Nuggets of mid-70s reggae,
Oh,
before,
wow.
where it kind of still is a lot of R&B and taking beautiful songs, and then you got the herbal essence of all of it. I think you could do a great Nuggets of female vocalists of the 2010s, Katy Perry and, even Taylor Swift. I
You just
mean,
have to give
these are
another
great
20
records.
years.
You know, you can, the metal. I mean, if you go to any genre and you take 25 or 30 of the greatest examples of that, you're going to have a Nuggets. I just happen to get it at a time that would speak to the next generation. That's what's really, I think, key about Nuggets, is that it became almost a template for all the bands that would come along, who are now under the rubric of punk rock, which may or may not be, a true stereotype.
Well, did you coin the phrase on the liner notes?
No, I mean, it was around, rock writers used it. I think Dave Marsh claims it, everybody claims it. But Greg Shaw, I possibly, he might be the real one. But, it was one of those phrases around. Garage rock hadn't been invented yet. That was kind of really a
Well, you got
retroactive
East Coast
genre.
didn't have garage. It would have been like basement rock, right?
Yeah,
I mean, West Coast is more of a garage,
yeah, my
yeah,
band practiced in the basement, but it doesn't have
yeah,
that,
Yeah, New York would be loft rock.
yeah, exactly.
Nice
Talking
loft
Heads
rock.
would be loft rock. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, the garage is great because, you're learning to tune up and, tune up an engine and tune up your band. And I don't know, it's got a great ring to it.
It
But,
does.
and obviously it's the one that seems to have stuck, especially being a disc jockey on the Underground Garage channel on Sirius. And, I understand. I'm not into definitions. To me, definitions are as limiting. That's what Mayo of the Red Crayola said on the back of the first Red Crayola album. Definitions define limit, and it's something I've always remembered. It's something we take to heart in the Patti Smith Group, that as soon as you start thinking yourself, that's who you are. And as a musician, I'm all over the place. I like garage rock, and I've played Gloria, 600,000 times at this point. But I like everything. And the more you blend it, and that's the thing about Nuggets, is that it's not just one music. It's all these people suddenly aware that there's so many musics out there that you could pillage from, borrow from, be influenced from. Weird instruments coming here, you got some raga rock here, and then you got some free jazz coming in here, and you're making a music that's never been heard before. And that's the great thing. And when it gets the name, when it's called garage rock, yeah, there's going to be some, like punk rock, there's always going to be great records, I mean, the Ramones had the template, and then all the English groups became punk, but you knew what those records were going to sound like. My punk is CBGB's in 1974, where you have 7 or 8 bands with a punk sensibility, whatever that is, sounding completely different from each other. Tom Verlaine said each band was like a separate idea. And, that's what I like. I like to be surprised. Otherwise, you're going to hear variations on a theme. And, we all like them. I mean, some of my favorite records are variations on a theme. But I like those ones that are just kind of, you don't know where to put them in the shelf, You file this one over free jazz, you file this one over in, space rock, who knows? But I like when things intermingle, when the borders are blurry, and really anything can happen. That's a great moment in time.
I got to ask one thing before because we want to get into a bunch of the songs.
We want to talk about some of the
Josh's.
songs. Yeah.
I have one question. So I'm wearing a T-shirt too. I wanted
Okay.
so Dave Gregory, the guitar. Okay, so in the mid '80s, XTC decides we're going to put together a psychedelic. They're not doing great with their record label. They decide, hey,
Oh yeah,
just
the
give
Dukes
us
of Stratosphere or
Dukes of
something like that.
Stratosphere.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, I have to imagine that Swindon, England is not getting some weird chocolate watch band 45 just showing up at some random shop and not getting the Mojo Man and everything. I'm going to imagine the Nuggets box set comes out And all these little guys have their minds blown by this compilation, because the first song on this record of the EP of 25 O'Clock is essentially the first song we're going to do today. You know, it owes a tremendous debt to the Virgin Prunes. And were you aware of it when this came out in like 85,
I was
87?
aware of it. I mean, the interesting thing about Nuggets, because it's all American groups essentially,
Right.
is that I didn't realize the impact it was going to make in America. I mean, over here, You're Gonna Miss Me by the 13th Floor Elevators. You could hear it on AM radio. That's the first place I heard it. It wasn't even FM at that point. Dirty Water was kind of a hit. The Seeds, Pushing Too Hard, was kind of a hit. But when the album got over to Europe, they didn't know who the 13th Floor Elevators were. They didn't know who the Seeds. And I remember the first tour that we went over to Europe with Patti, and we're in Denmark. We're playing a joint called Daddy's Dance Hall, and I've never been in Denmark, Copenhagen before. And I'm looking out from the dressing room, and there's one of those scenes, of trains out there like you see in old 40s movies. And I'm thinking, wow, this is cool. And we have the soundtrack, we have the press conference, and someone asked me, says, when is the next Nuggets coming out? I'm thinking, what? You even know about Nuggets? Because really, those groups were really mysterious over there, and I think really in the end, that's where a lot of the appeal and the bounce back, just like these American groups bounced off the British invasion, all of a sudden these American groups, start ping ponging across the Atlantic, and that to me is the great communication of music. It's beautiful when people hear something and translate it into their own language, the weirder it gets, the more I'm going to be putting it on my turntable.
So, opening song is the opening track on the thing. I Had Too Much to Dream Last Night, by the Virgin Prunes. Great name. Originally formed from a garage band at San Fernando Valley's Taft High School.
No, it's not it's not it's the
The
Electric Prunes.
I mean,
the
sorry,
Electric
the
Prunes.
Electric Prunes. My bad. The Virgin Prunes is another band.
They're the fourth iteration of prune bands.
Well, the Electric Prunes have virgin prunes until they come of age.
Yes,
They're
that's
really
right.
just called grapes.
Personally, I don't know how they lived with that name. I remember the first time, that is the first track. And in the summer of 72, I had finally all the pieces of the puzzle. We couldn't get 96 Tears. We couldn't get some other song, I See the Light by the Five Americans, ones I wanted. So I had to substitute here and, let's get this one. And anyway, finally, I guess around July or August of 72, I have all the pieces of the puzzle, and I write them in each one on an index card. And then I start laying them out like a tarot, like how they, because I'm into sequencing. I love albums. And even though they're all standalone cuts, need a sense of flow. And when I heard that opening weird backwards vibrato of the Electric Prunes, I knew that this was the one that was going to usher you into the mood of the record. Written by two professional songwriters, Pam Sawyer and someone else, produced and engineered by Dave Hashinger, who also worked with the Stones. And, it's a really professional record.
And I want to give a shout out to Taft High. You'll dig this, Josh. I'm an LA guy, so I love anything geographically. I get my little, nachas of pride with that also. Taft High was also where my friend Epic from Crazy Town went. It's where Danny Boy and Everlast put together House of Pain, one of the hip hop bands. Brad Wilk from Rage Against the Machine went there.
No
Jane
shit.
Weedland from the Go-Go's went there, and we'll get into the Go-Go's a little bit later. And then for me personally, you'll see the Oingo Boingo poster here. Steve Bartek went there, the guitar player from Oingo Boingo, but also the guitar player from the Strawberry Alarm Clock.
By the way, Jeremiah, you owe me $5. It took Morty 35 minutes and 22 seconds to say a Yiddish word. So, we got our first Yiddish word at 34:22.
Jeremiah, where are you in the conversation? You got to be making some bon mots.
Well, the one thing you were nominated for Grammys, 3 times for liner notes?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't win any.
So I know you can Google anything, but how does it make you feel about this art form? Because some bands just have still continued to keep this alive as Record Store
Well,
Day.
I don't write about any bands that are still alive. That's my, because then you're really
Because they're
essentially writing a
litigious.
press release. I mean, I'm mostly a historical writer. I've written a book on the crooners of the 1930s, Rudy Valley and Bing Crosby and Russ Columbo, one crazier than the next, called "You Call It Madness." And I really love to write. My new book, Lightning Striking: 10 Transformative Moments in Rock and Roll. It's a way to really dig deeply into the history of this wonderful music. And I do believe that there is rhythm and melody in a sentence, as well as a narrative arc and a guitar solo. And so, I can kind of move back and forth between the two parts of my brain when I'm either writing or playing. And I really appreciate that in my sense of consciousness.
It's the same thing with rock and roll, because Josh does the rock and, besides the comedy jam, you bring music to all your sets now. I mean, that's like a huge.
Yeah, my show is I'm more I always say I'm more Sammy Davis Jr. than I am like Mitch Hedberg. I'm a performer. I like to perform, and it's
I'll come see your drum solo.
Oh no! You think that I'm not, dude? We have a drummer at the Comedy Cellar, and I do it all. I'm on tables, dude. I'm Strawberry Alarm Clock. Okay,
hey,
hold on.
I've been to parties where they played Josh Meyers records, but I've never been to a party where Josh Meyers.
God, when you just say Josh Meyers, it sounds so much like a bar mitzvah boy. Little Joshua.
Okay.
Joshua
I'll just
Meyers.
call you Jam, man.
Yeah, that's my initials, dude. Do that. That's
there you
cool.
go.
All right, here back to the prunes. Which I never thought I'd ever say in my life.
You think a Jew wouldn't say "back to the prunes"?
Look, a lot of other bands after this first single failed, they needed some help with songwriting, according to the record label. So although this second single has a lot of macho male energy, it was actually written by the female songwriting team of Nancy Mance and Annette Tucker and intended to be played with the style and attitude of a Rolling Stones songs. So I love that fact, especially when Morty told me that. We want to ask you this. Here's where we get to start to dig into the breadth of your illustrious career with some people might be unaware of. Obviously, I want to ask you about your work with Patti Smith, but I want to let the Fleece Army know, that's our fan base, that you co-produced the first two albums by singer-songwriter Suzanne Vega.
Yes.
Which includes her second album, 1987's Solitude Standing, which featured both the hit song Luca, which became a staple on MTV, as well as the a cappella Tom's Diner, which is one of my favorite songs from that era, which was later remixed into a club hit with a big beat backed by DNA. However, due to and aspiring to retain the warmth of the original a cappella version, it was chosen to be used in the creation of the compression systems for streaming audio, which would make Suzanne Vega the mother of the MP3. I guess you would be one of the fathers too.
I'll tell you a funny story about Tom's Diner. It really shows something that I like to think of as psychoacoustics. When we did the original tracking of, she would always use it to open her show. And so one day we thought, okay, Suze, it's, time to commit this to, to whatever. And she went out there and she did it about, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 times. And, I circled the one that I thought was the best as it came through. And that was it. And then we took the record out to A&M in LA and we mixed it. And, Luca took 3 days to mix. It was really an amazing process with Shelley Ackes at the helm. We made a beautiful record. I mean, we just knew that we had made, and also the first record, which was kind of an interesting record because it's so intimate in a time when things were so larger than life. You had MTV, Twisted Sister, Cyndi Lauper, huge personalities. And here's Suzanne bringing it back down to just an acoustic guitar, which, I thought it was a beautiful moment where the culture called for something. Anyway, we're out there, mixing all the hard stuff. And then it's time to come to Tom's Diner. So we roll up, roll up the tape, hit play. Man, that sounds great. And then I look at the box and I think, wait, that's not the one I circled. So we go back and listen to the one I circled, and it's not as good. That was a beautiful, beautiful moment in time. And now, of course, none of those other versions exist because of the Universal, the horrible Universal fire, which took out all those master tapes. But I have to say, at that point, the recording gods were with us. Like I said, we listened to it. Oh, man, that's perfect. And then we listened to the other one. That's imperfect.
Did she record with a click track, or was that just a
No,
cappella off her head?
No, I don't think anything was done with a click track.
Wow.
I mean, I understand click tracks, okay, and sometimes you need it if you're going to do a bunch of complicated overdubs, but especially in terms of a rhythm section, I believe rhythm sections should breathe. It's not like you're going to be faster or slower, but you're going to move with the feel, especially when a band is playing. If you're all listening to the click track, you're listening to the click track. You're not listening to each other.
I meant more like, was there a guide track on that, or did she just go in there?
She just went in and sang it.
I mean, because that's she's
and, I got to say DNA, which I actually got producer credit on their hit. It was amazing. They did a really smart thing. They took that sample and, it was great. I have to say, Lord love the gods of creativity.
By the way, one more moment. So those of you, this is a quick throwback. Bleecker Bob was sort of parodied on Seinfeld. There's a moment on there where Newman and Kramer go in to sell records, and the guy is notoriously kind of a dick, and he goes, "Yeah, I'll give you $5 for him." And it's actually filmed the exterior is Bleecker Bob's when they go in there to do that. But for those of you that don't know, Tom's Diner is actually Tom's restaurant, which is 112th and Broadway, which is the exterior of Monk's Cafe on Seinfeld. She's singing it. When they show the restaurant that they all hang out at? That's Tom's Diner.
It's all interrelated.
It's all.
Oh man, it's all
first.
Incense, peppermints, ripples in time. Who cares the games we play? All right. Let's get to another one. How about Dirty Water? By the Standells? Yeah. All right. Although the Standells were another California band, this ode to Boston and its notoriously polluted Boston Harbor and Charles River has become an anthem of pride played at Boston sports events. Lenny, tell us about how that made it onto the record or
well, none of them were in Boston. Ed Cobb wrote it. Here's another example. You think of these garage bands. Well, this wasn't a garage band. One of them was Russ Tamblin's brother. Another one was an ex-Mouseketeer. And they're being produced by Ed Cobb, who's, really like working the psychedelic thing. And he wrote it about being robbed or something along the Boston River, a couple of years back. But, you got that hook line. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
And the vocal, I'm going to tell you a story. Going to tell you about my town. It's like,
so good.
It captures the garage rock, but it's not, some kids in a garage. And there are, kids in a garage coming up with, Liar, Liar came out of the Castaways came out of a garage in Minneapolis. But this is a professional songwriter, working with a group of professionals. It's sometimes you print the myth, and I like that. I'm all about that. But these were smart records made to get radio airplay.
Was this a regional hit in Boston at the time, or was it?
It was a national hit. It was a national hit. It was really, where else would I hear it? On the radio.
Because I didn't know if you pulled these 45s just like, hey, I got this. I like the label. And,
a lot of them I knew, a lot of, I also knew that the groups were kind of under-regarded and not really respected because they weren't this new progressive thing. They were still tied to AM radio, but they definitely had a future mentality of what, what was being called for in rock and roll's glorious adolescence. let's be honest. I mean, I am associated with the 60s and all power to that. But in the transition period from 1963, when the Beatles started, to 1967, so much happened. To me, it's like the Italian Renaissance. You had these larger than life figures. Titian and Michelangelo and Raphael. All of a sudden you have Jimi Hendrix, the Yardbirds, these magnificent groups, the MC5, all it's a glory. It's like being a teenager where all of a sudden your hormones are on overload and you're going wild. And so many things that would become tropes in rock and roll were invented then. And then, you have variations on a theme, backwards and forwards. You're going to have punk rock, which is raw, and then new wave where, oh my God, it's a synthesizer and you sample it. You go through these evolutionary phases probably once every 3 or 4 years, and by the fifth year something really is new. You can really see that in the 80s with metal. You have hair metal, which seems to rule the roost. And I like a good guitar solo and some crazy lead singer telling me to party hardy all night. And it's going to change the channel, and you're going to have like these scruffy you know you know bands out of Seattle, like who are not pretty and don't want to be. And I like when things change. I've since we're on the verge of some kind of change now. Things have gotten so poppy, and so I just don't know. It's like there's such a sheen to them that I just feel like there's an underground waiting to suddenly start asserting itself. I don't know what's going to sound like. It probably won't be pushed on by guitars, because I think everything that's been said by a guitar has been said 14 times over. You have a plethora of new instruments at your disposal, ways to make music. I mean, the things you can do in the studio today. I remember when you had to edit a piano part in the 80s or 90s, and the engineer would say, "Oh, well, come back in 3 hours," and now you just flip it around and turn it on its back and do whatever you like to it in a second. And it's going to change the way we hear music. Is it going to be better or worse? Well, I don't think like that. To me, song is always about the same thing. I need love. I'm not getting enough love. I want to become somebody. I hate myself. I'm frustrated. All of these things, that's what songs are. But if you listen to songs from the 1940s, the sounds are so different. They're all, big bands and all that stuff. And today, but the topics are the same. That what we want from a song to move our emotions is the same. And I personally find that fascinating. I spend a lot of time listening to TikTok radio on Sirius, just for fun. I mean, sometimes it's ridiculous, and sometimes you hear a song with a hook that like drives you up a wall, and you think, man, that is so smart. What's that song by Gail I like? ABCDEFU. Oh, genius. I wish I came up with that.
That's like the chaperone that go to or whatever. I have a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
So I turn to her and I go, okay, what am I missing? I go, what do I need to know? And then she'll know 30 seconds or 20 seconds of everything. She came up to me when I played her. Yes. I played, what did I play? Not Roundabout. I played one of those songs, and she just goes, because it was using an animated thing and it was on TikTok. And she heard a second. She's like, I know this. I go, how do you know? Yes. I go, where would you have? I'm the only one that would have turned you on to it. She goes, it's on TikTok. And then that was how I go, oh, wow. Anything can come back.
I mean, really, it's kind of exciting, actually. You don't know what's going to come down the pike, what's going to move you. I mean, I had a laugh when Eminem used that Steve Miller sample for, of a song that I don't even think that's great in the Steve Miller canon. To me, he never beat Children of the Future. That's his first album. But, there it is. And it's taken on a whole new way. And it's part of our progression as a human race, where one of the most wonderful things we do is make music.
I love that.
It's our most beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And then we make more. So what's the point?
You are a futurist. You are a science fiction futurist.
I am a science fiction fan.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I know.
I want to move on to the next song because what you
Okay.
just said there was so perfect, dude. That was so great. Morty, do you have anything you want to add? I'm gonna
For
jump
this
into
one, no. For this one, just you got your Boston thing for the
yeah.
next one.
That's
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about "Nighttime" by the Strange Loves. Speaking of Boston, many people know this one from the cover by the Jay Giles Band.
That's where
Tell
I
us.
knew it from originally.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I
It's
had never
another
heard it. Well,
example of quasi garage rock. Here's three really sophisticated producers: Bob Feldman,
Jerry Goldstein
Jerry
and
Goldstein, and
yeah.
Richard Goddard. They've already done "My Boyfriend's Back," um, and they're working they're working the British invasion. So they invent a stage name, and they're sheep farmers from New Zealand or something ridiculous like
Yeah,
that.
Giles, Miles, and Niles
Yeah,
Strange.
but they make a great record. And
No, that's which is like a Ramones. I mean, really, they're kind of the prototype
yeah,
where they come up with these three brothers with weird hair and who just make up this character group to do these kind of things, even though they know more.
no, they're a very smart record. I mean, they did "Hang On Sloopy" by the
Yeah, for the
McCoys.
McCoys. Yeah.
They smart guys, and yeah. So I mean, this was made in a very sophisticated New York recording studio.
The
The
one
only
thing I have a
McCoy
question.
there was Rick Derringer. The rest were
Yeah.
back in Ohio waiting to join the band.
And then Richard Goddard, so you guys know, he teamed up with Seymour Stein and started Sire Records, which we owe. I mean, they put out after Elektra. I'm assuming Elektra like lost the rights. Didn't you re-put this out on Sire?
Yeah, and he was smart because it all of a sudden it was there for that next generation. I think it came out in '76. But yeah, they were all in that Warner Electra, conglomerate thing. So all they did was pass it along. I mean, the thing about Nuggets is that about 10 years after it came out, I think I had 1 percentage point. I was paid $750 advance, and I had 1 percentage point on it. And somewhere around the early '80s, Warner Brothers sent me a note saying, "Well, this is never going to recoup its losses, so we're going to stop sending you royalties." So yeah,
Before the CDs and all those
before
compilations
everything,
and
I mean,
oh
now a few pennies, dribble in,
right,
so I can go down to my local bar and get a
the
VFW,
shekels.
shot in a beer, and what can I say?
By the way,
And of course,
Richard
again,
Goddard. Oh
those
yeah,
free beers. I haven't made much royalties, but I've been all over the world, and someone says, "I love nuggets. Would you like a beer?" I say, "Sure."
I was going to say one more thing is Richard Goddard, so you guys know that ties it to the show, is he produced the first two Blondie albums, but he also produced Beauty and the Beat for the Go-Go's.
Oh yeah.
oh no shit.
And he's produced others. I mean, Richard Goddard's got it. They started FGG, which is the three of them, more nice Jewish boys,
And he
who put
also
together,
invented the Orchard, which was one of the first digital distributors
yep.
of music.
So this
Good
guy's,
guy.
made his bones.
Well, I wanted to ask you about because me and Morty were talking about this band. It's like, why this song "Nighttime" instead of the more obvious "I Want Candy" with that big Bo Diddley beat?
I don't know. I just like nighttime. I mean, really, it's just songs I liked. I probably liked it more than I Want Candy.
Was I Want Candy a big hit before Bow Wow
Yeah,
Wow?
yeah. I mean, they were all up there. I just chose the one I like. I really wasn't that serious about it or thinking, oh, is this a bigger hit? I just threw on my favorite songs. I think I like Nighttime because it's got that talking part. You know, get close to your radio. Can you really hear what I'm saying? Now you got me turned on. So,
Which is a real Peter Wolf thing, because we had Bill Burr on. You had Bill Burr on for who's from that area for
Yeah.
the Peter Wolf episode, and I was trying to explain like Peter Wolf was a DJ.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
he was a
And
fast
that's how
feeling.
the Jay Giles Band found all those incredible songs. First, I Look at the Person. I mean, a lot of their
House
first
Party
album
and
is
right.
like really obscure covers, and he knew his records.
I love that. That's what I love about that, because it's the same thing. I don't know if that it happens anymore where guys in bands are as reverent about the past. You know what I mean? Like it's just something like now, like I'm almost too much of a fan to be a musician because I'm so love the thing. I want to just sit around and talk about it. You know,
Yeah.
and there's other guys that are just doing it.
I just want to lift a lick and have a hit single. That's
Well, word.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, let's move on to Lies by the Knickerbockers. At the time, many people assumed this was the Beatles. I honestly did. You know, it's funny that Morty that you say that because it's true. It's like this sounds like the Beatles due to the similarities of their harmonies. Tell us about it. Tell us about Lies.
They said they're from Bergenfield, New Jersey, named after Knickerbocker Avenue. And they set out consciously. There's two brothers, I forget their names, Bo or something, but they consciously set out to replicate the Beatles. And it was a very sophisticated production. They went out to LA to do it. It was produced by Jerry Fuller,
Oh wow.
who had one of my favorite summer songs, Here Comes Summer. Almost June, the time is bright. You know, a professional songwriter, and they really worked hard making a great single. Unfortunately for the Knickerbockers, their record company was not equipped to continue to promote them as they should. And even though, you know, their subsequent records, One Track Mind and things like that are great, you know, they just couldn't get any traction. And so let's file under the one hit wonder thing. But that's what Nuggets is all about. One hit wonders. If you have one, that's plenty.
Yeah,
Right.
man.
It says the band wrote this in less than a half hour. I mean, you've been involved as a producer in so many, you know, hit songs. Like, is that, I feel like this keeps happening time and time again where we read it was like the last album on, or the last song on the album, and it took us 20 minutes, or the
Oh
rest
yeah.
of the band left, and it was just the producer and the singer, and they, like, I'm just curious about these like lightning striking moments.
Well, lightning striking, but it's also like you have inspiration and you don't have time to screw around with it. You know, oh well maybe it should have been falsehoods too, or you know, who knows what. But I like the fact that sometimes you can, you know, I mean, Hanky Panky was written as a B-side for I think a girl group called the Raindrops by Jeff Barry and
Oh,
Cynthia Weil.
Greenwich. Was it Greenwich or
Greenwich,
Wow?
yeah, Jeff
Yeah,
Barry
yeah.
and Ellie Greenwich, and you know, they didn't even know anything about it. Tommy James picks it up, hears it from a garage band up in Michigan, only has about 5 of the words, you know, so he doesn't even have their words, which are minimal. He records it on a station at a radio station. He puts it out, you know, sells 500 copies in the local area, Niles, Michigan, and that's it. And then a Pittsburgh DJ finds a copy, Mad Mike, starts playing at his record hops. They track down Tommy James. The Shondells have long been dispersed. He goes down to Pittsburgh. I mean, it's amazing how the music business can work. You know,
And then
usually
Morris
it works
Levy
the other
won.
way. You
Yeah.
know, you get a great record and then, you know, the buildings fall down upon you. But, you know, here's an example where all of a sudden, and they take it to Morris Levy, who at Roulette Records, and all of a sudden he has the #1 record for like, you know, 6 or 8 weeks. What a story. And then, of course, a great career after that, which is even
Yeah.
better. You know, he makes even better records. So,
And Morris Levy doesn't throw him out a window, as we've
yeah,
heard so
exactly.
much about.
But, you know, I mean, that's a great, it's to me, it's like, you know, a great roulette wheel. You know, sometimes, you know, you hit that 00, and sometimes those great records, of which we know there's hundreds of thousands. I mean, I go to a record fair and, you know, I look at the sea of 45s, you know, maybe there's like 500,000 out there or something. And I like to think, well, I know a lot about this or that. And, you know, I maybe know 10%, 15% of the artists. And, you know, I know that buried in there, there's incredible records. I mean, somebody just turned me on to a record called, where is it? Oh, I lost a piece of paper. Cadillac and Women by the Drivers on Apollo. You know, I actually went on eBay looking for it. It's around
Is it an old
$100.
record?
It's from 1970, from what
Oh,
somebody
wow.
told me. It's an awesome record, and I'm going to get it one of these days.
Everybody
You
go
know,
on Napster.
when
The,
I'm
the,
drunk.
the, the father of MP3s just told us how to find it.
Well, you know, I like the 45. I go
Of
stick them
course.
on my thumb, you know, and spin through them. And when I DJ, I only spin 45s. I don't use headphones. I know exactly where to put the needle in the groove, and so it starts
Wow.
perfectly.
That's fantastic, man.
Dig it. My God, this is this rules. All right, let's move on to "Pushing Too Hard" by the Seeds.
My favorite.
Although,
My
really, all right,
favorite of all the Nuggets. You know, I mean, they're all great, but I love the Seeds. And in fact, I just played "Pushing Too Hard" last night at a local concert here in Pennsylvania. You know, 2 chords. You know, I can remember most of the words, and if I don't, who cares? And it's just a genius putting together. You know, they are my favorites. And I don't know, about 20 years ago, they played in some configuration down at the Knitting Factory, and I actually got to see Jan Savage play that solo. It was a great moment in time.
Wow. I think I did a gig. I did a revival thing, and Sky played that gig, and I only knew of him. Now I would have had a little more
He was
reverence.
really as insane as we've been led to believe.
He's one of those, one of those fellas. And by the way, the saddest story about Sky Saxon. Here's a moment for you. He dies on June 25th, 2009, and then a little later, Farrah Fawcett dies. But they both get overshadowed because later that day, Michael Jackson dies.
Yeah. Oh, I remember. Yeah.
Oh,
so talk about a footnote.
Talk about
footnote.
threes.
Yeah, man. In the same day, but also a footnote. They're like, man, wait, Sky Sat? Who? The guy from the? Oh wow, Michael Jackson. By the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Who's he?
And
Jesse Jackson's son. Wait a second.
Yeah. He's Andrew Jackson's great grandfather.
Well, we you know, you had found that lead singer Sky Saxon also became a garage rock icon to a later generation, including Billy Corgan and the Smashing Pumpkins. That's pretty rad, man. Because this is, you know, it's like you said, it's 2 chords, but you know, defiant lyrics. This is proto punk.
It's a great song. I mean, you know, I like to play it, and I can play it with any band. I just say A minor to G and don't stop.
Yeah.
And, you know,
it's got that. It's got that young dude thing of, hey, lady, you're fucking pushing me too hard. You know, your mom,
the punk rock attitude.
Yeah.
Garage rock.
Well, you know, I guess I'll ask this: pushing too hard, you know, because like, how did you and so many of your contemporaries, you know, with so many of your contemporaries falling prey to habits and abuses that took them out, how did you avoid the same pitfalls?
I like to work. I mean, it's not to say that I haven't been a stoner for 60 some years now at this point. But, you know, I like myself. I have no desire to obliterate myself. Patti and I have the same thing, which we call a work ethic. You know, I like to stay up until 3:30 in the morning at my local joint, dancing to White Wedding and whooping it up and whatever. But I also like to get up in the morning and do my work. And if I do a good day's work, then I feel fulfilled. You know, I have no desire to, you know, and I've known too many people. I've lost too many people who got kind of sidelined by drugs, you know, and you know, I'm also lucky. I don't have what they call an addictive personality unless it's about records, and but no, I mean, I have no desire to obliterate myself. I like to have fun, but I also, you know, I also have no desire to cancel my life. And I've seen too many people cancel their life, you know, for reasons that, you know, they shouldn't. I'm kind of happy with who I am. I look forward to getting up in the morning. I get to think about music all day, whether it's listening to it or, you know, writing it or recording it or writing about it or, you know, just, you know, having the radio on and finding some rabbit hole of some artist that I've only vaguely heard of and, you know, traveling down it and understanding who they are. You know, I'm lucky, but again, you know, to me, it's all about the work ethic.
Totally.
I love that.
Totally. That was a great answer. That was perfect. Let's move on to You're Gonna Miss Me. the 13th Floor Elevators. Really love the names of these bands. A lot of them I haven't heard of before, but good God. Not to downplay lead singer and psychedelic Sky Ranger Rocky Erickson's contributions, but it's hard to find another song that features the electric jug blown by Tommy Hall.
Well, this was a really insane band, and they lived it as they liked it. They're actually a real underpinning of the San Francisco sound, because they went out there in start of '66, and there were a lot of Texans out there, including Janis Joplin and Chet Helms, who ran the Avalon Ballroom. But yeah, they lived it hard. I mean, they took more psychedelics. That whole record, the first album, was made in 12 hours when they drove home from after driving from San Francisco back to I don't know where they were. Maybe
They're
they
Texas band, right?
yeah, Texas. And that's a
we had-
crazy label, the International Artist label. They have so many weird things. I mean, the fact is that all of these groups have great tales, and the more you know about them, the crazier they are.
And if I'm not mistaken, a great thing about this is, well, we had Billy Gibbons on. His first band, Moving Sidewalks, wasn't that sort of a tribute to 13th Floor Elevators?
Oh yeah, I mean, and they did a song called 99th Floor. So
right.
We got so many floors going on in this psychedelic high rise.
It's all about moving,
great
man.
Texas scene. I mean, Texas is really one of the hotbeds of garage rock, as was kind of the upper Midwest. So many. I like things from there because I'm not so into music that comes from the music capitals. One of the things I like about CBGB is, though, we were in the heart of a music business capital, but the fact that it was, 60 blocks south of Columbus Circle, and couldn't have been further from the heartbeat of the music business. So it had a lot of time to develop these bands. They were really all, I mean, for a year and a half, they were just playing to each other. It was 25 people there, swapping members, having fights on stage, figuring out, having time to figure out what they were doing. And that to me is really important, because these days I feel like a group gets together, immediately makes something, and they put it on the net. And, that's not, you need time to figure things out. With Patti, we started playing regularly around the end of '73. We didn't even have a drummer until 1975. By each member coming in when it was needed, we were able to organicize our sound so that by the time we actually had the makings of a true rock and roll band, we were unique. We didn't sound like, oh, let's get a band together and then we can sound like 14 other people. And so, you got to have patience. Both Patti and I are Capricorns, so I'm taking a long time to climb that mountain.
That's the work ethic, right?
Yeah, you got to work at it. You can't get yourself distracted by, somebody waving a pile of money here, or, if you do this, you can do that. I mean, you got to follow what your artistic instincts, and not get distracted by, all the shiny baubles that people put in front of you in the music business, and that's how you survive.
Sorry. The folklore is true, right, Patti? You met at Village Oldies?
Yeah, she had called me up. I'd written an article for Jazz and Pop magazine called "The Best of Acapella," and acapella was such a niche. It was kind of in the afterglow of doo-wop. These bands,
Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross, or like
no, just doo-wop.
Oh, right.
And Village Oldies was primarily a group harmony shop. That Times Square, all these. So the record shops would put out records by these groups, a cappella, with no instrumental backing. And I was really into this. It was kind of from Connecticut down to Philadelphia, with stops mostly in Newark and New Jersey, these bands who would go into a studio. But it was already the British invasion, so they were fighting a rear guard method. But I knew about it. I was, I collected them. Some of them were beautiful. Lonely Way by the Zircons, one of the most beautiful records ever made. And so I felt the need to write about this. And so I wrote an article for Jazz and Pop called "The Best of Acapella." And Patti read it, and she called me up. I was staying at a friend's house because I didn't have an apartment at the time. And she says, it really moved her because it was the same kind of music she listened to in South Jersey. And we talked, I'd kind of seen her around Max's or something like that from a distance. And she started coming in the record store where I work, and I put on our favorite records, and we danced sometimes. My Hero by the Blue Notes, Today's the Day by Maureen Gray. Beautiful, beautiful records. And we shared them. And again, one day she came into the store and says, I'm going to do a poetry reading at St. Mark's Church. This was in just about the turn of 1971. And I want to shake it up a little bit. I hear you play a little guitar. It's a little, very little guitar. And yeah, so I went over to the loft where she was living with Robert Mapplethorpe, and I brought my little guitar and champ amp. And I just kind of watched how she breathed, and so I play like, simple chords, E to F, dum 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 dum, and as the song, as the poem got wilder, we got wilder, and that was it. February 10th, 1971. Actually, my life really turned on a dime then, because I have a letter that I wrote to Greg Shaw at the end of January 71, where we're talking about Nuggets, Greg, what suggestions, I'm going to do this record, and, we both like this kind of music. And by the way, in a couple of weeks, I'm playing a weird kind of poetry reading with this local poet. And I look at this letter from January 71, I think, this is a moment when my life turns on a dime. And I find it really remarkable. Anyway, again, we didn't do it again for another 2.5 years. I mean, it wasn't supposed to be a band. It was like an art happening or whatever. And
it's a happening.
It was a happening, man.
Yeah.
It's a noun. It's not a verb.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't know. I mean, I probably would have had a band sometimes. I knew how to play guitar, and I might have been one of those CBGB's bands. But the fact that this whole thing kind of synchronized a life that has led to the 500 with Josh Adam Meyers and Morty and Jeremiah. It's like, it's a pretty amazing journey. And later today, when I roll up that spliff and sit on the porch with my clam on the half shell, and I think, wow, it's so weird how I got here.
Josh will get you on that front too. You guys will duck back in the Comedy Cellar.
Lenny, I was reading that Patti was also a rock music journalist. She wrote for Rolling Stone and Cream. Is that true?
She was kind of like an abstract music journalist. She never really pursued it. She her reviews were kind of more poetic and kind of an outlet for her poetry. I was a working rock journalist. I worked for like 4 or 5 Rolling Stone and Crawdaddy and whatever, Disco Music Echo over in England. I was, banging away on the typewriter all the time, but she was more poetic. But, sometimes people would say, would you review this? And, she would review Lotta Lenya for Rolling Stone. And, Jan Wenner would kind of look a bit perplexed. He would,
and by the way, he'll put Lotta Lenya in the Hall of Fame before the Monkees.
So this song came together from many versions several decades before it became known in garage rock circles. Different people added and removed portions of the lyrics and music, and several people put their names on as songwriters in the process. So its exact origins are a little bit murky. However, this was the first commercial released version. In fact, the Lees recorded and released 3 versions of this between 65 and 66. Obviously, when Jimi Hendrix released this as his first single from his debut, it became the definitive version. This was also the first single you released with Patti Smith on your own independent label.
Right.
Did you urge Patti to cover this?
I can't remember how it came about. We were covering, we were doing this thing where Patti would do a poem and then it would lead into a song. That's how her poem land. Look at this land, where we am. Failed moon over the horizon. Moved into Land of a Thousand Dances.
Right, with
It's
Gloria
how
and Piss Factory.
Gloria
Yeah,
began, with her poem. Jesus died for somebody's sins, but not
but not
mine.
mine.
Hilton in a pot
Right.
of thieves. And then we moved it into Gloria. So I assume that that's what happened with Hey Joe. I can't remember the exact moment where we scissored those two together, but by the time we got to the recording studio on June 5th of 1974 with Tom Verlaine in tow, that was the song we were going to record. And we did the slow version like Jimmy because we were doing it in Electric Lady in Studio B in the back, the
So
8-track
wild.
studio.
No shit.
And, we just did it. Jimmy got his version, I believe, from Tim Rose's slow version. And Tim Rose, of course, claimed he wrote it. So it's kind of a mess. Billy Roberts is the one that should get the credit. Though from what I hear, it was Billy Roberts's wife who came up with this song off the Circle of Fifths. I don't
Right.
know, songs come from so many different places, and I don't really read the writer credits unless I'm being cut out of them. but
Right.
it's a great classic. The song was really popular on the Sunset Strip for some reason.
Yeah, Dave
Love
Crosby, they were
covered
talking
it,
about.
the Byrds, and who knows who did it first. Everybody claims the first, but the Leaves did have the early version, and you couldn't have an album dedicated to the middle 60s of a rock band then and not have Hey Joe. It's one of those, instantaneous ones. Of course, Where's Gloria, the national anthem of garage
That
rock
right. That's the
on
last song
Nuggets.
we played at the Nugget show was
Yeah,
all of us
I
coming
mean,
on stage for Gloria.
if I would have had to do it together, I might put it there. But on the other hand, Jack wanted songs that weren't especially the hit. He wanted a little deeper track. And so I would dig for that deeper track. And my favorite track on the Shadows of Night album was Oh Yeah. The irony, of course, is that I liked it because it had a really great middle section of, improvisation. And when I heard it on the record, they used the single version, which cuts that whole thing out. So I thought, oh, but there's only so much space on an album. But Hey Joe, if you were in a band in the mid '60s, as I was, the Zoo, bringing down the house with your kind of music, no, it was actually that was the Vandals. The Zoo was For Your Very Own Horror Show. On our business card, of course. Those were the songs you played. You played Dirty Water. You played Pushing Too Hard. I remember us playing My Generation, and when we got to the rave up in the section, instead of things getting wild, we sat cross-legged on the floor and played Raga Rock. And that's when I started singing Gloria. I remember the moment perfectly at the Middlesex County Fair in it's probably 1966, and I'm singing it. And this is my first year or two being in a band, and we're playing a bunch of locals, and I look, and there in the back row is the girl that I had a crush on my school bus, and I'm looking at her, and she's looking at me, and I'm thinking, oh, what a wonderful moment it is. And then you got the yakking part in Gloria, which you can just go anywhere. I've done it at weddings, tell the story of how the bride and groom got together. Gloria's walked down every street I've walked. She's come up to my room many a time, and we've indulged in every shenanigan I can think of. It's a great song, and it is the national anthem of garage rock, and that's why I always ask people to stand.
And yet an Irish band.
Yeah. And I would have loved. Van Morrison learned to do it in Hamburg when he was playing with a group called the Monarchs, I think. And sometimes the middle section would stretch to 15 minutes, and I
Wow.
just crave the fact that
Wow.
I would have loved to hear what those versions were like. But everybody
Sure.
did it. The Doors
Yeah,
would also
Morrison,
stretch
yeah.
it out. Yeah. I heard a very late version, I think, on their live album.
Like
But I would
68,
like
I
to
think,
hear
or
ones
something.
from like when they were doing it at the Whiskey A Go Go or something. But
Yeah.
it's a great song. Everybody
Great.
knows it. I just tell the band it's EDA, and when I tell you to
I love
get
this.
down,
It's like the
do it,
Chuck
and
Berry thing. We're in G, don't stop.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
You
And then
know?
gee, haven't I seen you someplace before? L. Well, that's the first letter of my name.
Uh,
Oh. You can go on forever.
dude, and then I wanted to mention, because I said it earlier, "Baby Please Don't Go" by the what is it, Amboy
Another
Dukes?
the flip
Yeah.
side, the flip
Yeah,
side of Gloria. That's
yeah,
crazy, right?
yeah. But that's like, dude, this is like, this is a staple to me. It's like, this is one of the songs that when I heard it come up, I was like, oh wow, this is on here, and this upbeat big Joe Williams blues number is probably the most covered song of the collection, with versions going back about 30 years from this recording, and elements of the song going back even further. The most notable thing about this hard rocking psychedelic band from Detroit is that their founder and lead guitarist was Ted Nugent. The long freakout solo jam includes a snatch of Jimi Hendrix's Third Stone from the Sun in Nugent's solo.
I think that's ballsy. That in his guitar solo, he throws in a quote from Jimi Hendrix. Bow, bow, no, no,
He's a great
no,
guitar
no.
player.
Yeah,
Obviously,
yeah,
his
schmuck. But
personality
yeah,
rubs me the wrong way, but it's a great example. And again, I could have used their hit, "Journey
yeah.
to the
Journey to
Center
the
of the
Center of the
Mind,"
Mind. I
but
wondered why
no,
you didn't choose that, which is way more
because
psychedelic.
I love "Baby Please Don't Go,"
Right there, you
especially the
go.
part where it's the guitar goes like an elephant. I just thought, whoa. I mean, really, the album Nuggets is very self-indulgent. Gotta say, I put my favorite songs on it. I was allowed to. My brief was that I could, and so I would. I mean, it closes with that insane "It's a Happening" by the Magic Mushrooms. Uh, I, I was lucky, you know. I just, some of those records were what, 4 years old,
That's what I
5 years
was
old.
wondering. Yeah, 'cause I was
I mean,
wondering if
this I'm
like,
going all the way
yeah,
back to 2018, man, 2019. Um, I don't know. I just and it
lo-
seemed like it was such a long distance. That's the thing. It's like an era had passed, and I was too close to it to understand why it had passed or see it where it was going in the future. But it just felt like this needed to be remembered and documented and enjoyed. And I was given an opportunity by Jack Holzman that really I feel blessed about every single day, because the album has a life of its own. Everywhere I go, somebody says, how much Nuggets meant to them, and I say, yeah, means a lot
and
to me too.
and
What can
Josh
I
and I
Yeah.
say?
were talking about earlier was like a lot of these guys must have like they did their single, a couple songs, and then they moved on with their lives. They
Yeah,
went
and
to
then when we
college or
wanted
took
to license it, they said, "Hey, Elektra's interested in us. Let's get the band back together. Would you
right.
guys
I was
like an
wondering.
album? Can you
Yeah.
please?" Yeah.
5 years later, they're like, somebody gives it. It's the same with Jerry Harrison, how the Modern Lovers record didn't come out. And then by the time it came out, he'd already gone back to college. And then now he's one of these architects of punk rock and new wave. And the Talking Heads are like, we can get the guy from Modern Lovers. And the guy from Modern Lovers was like in college going, well, I did it. I did music. Now I
Exactly.
moved on with my life.
Yeah.
You don't know. I mean, it's like playing pinball, the music business, and sometimes you're able to get through all the bells and whistles and keep on doing what you hope to be doing. And I
Speaking of
feel lucky that
serious, yeah.
Yeah.
that's what my life is about. I
And
just trying to, as they say in Spinal Tap, have a good time all the time.
I don't know if you might have just answered it here, but was everybody that you offered honored, or were there a lot of people shitty about it, or anybody
Well,
shitty
it
about it?
depended on who owned the licensing, essentially. I didn't deal
Okay.
with any of that. The secret weapon in Nuggets was a guy named Michael Kapp, who was the son of Mickey Kapp of Kapp Records. And he was a lawyer, and he was in charge of licensing at a time when, Rhino now has an entire department devoted to getting licenses and putting all these pieces together. He had to track down whoever owned these weird records, get their signature on a piece of paper. And he did something very smart. He got it without a timeline. He got the rights to use
Like in
on this thing
perpetuity.
in perpetuity. So when we reissued Nuggets, we didn't have to renegotiate. He was dogged about it. I remember we had like 24 tracks and 25, and I'm saying, well, let's try to get this one. And he'd go and, pull it in. What happened with the second Nuggets, because they did pick up the option pretty quickly, is that not only did Jack Holzman leave the company, but Michael Kapp went to a different department. And so they had another lawyer. And after about, 6 or 8 or 9 months, whatever, I said, what's happened? He said, well, we've almost got the rights to 3 songs. And then, it just kind of vanished in the haze. But I feel very lucky that when the 50th anniversary came along, Rhino Records, in the person of Patrick Milligan, was very anxious to put out Volume 2, a golden anniversary edition, a box set with Volume 2 as its thing. And I was able to take out my original list of what I hoped for on Nuggets. And, Rhino went to town, and they made a Volume 2 in my image. I mean, I like the Rhino box, but there's some things on the Rhino box that I wouldn't have put on there. And they also some things that were drawn from my list. And then you got, all these kind of, fake Nuggets and I mean, all this stuff. But I have to say that the Volume 2 that came out about a year and a half ago is my vision of what Nuggets Volume 2 would have been. I mean, it sounds a little different than it would have 50 years ago. I mean, I had to take a couple songs off that, like Time Won't Let Me, which is so overly familiar.
Yeah.
It's a great song, but it's like, we've heard it. Some of those songs that were kind of under the wire are too known now. And so I was able to insert some weirder things. But, in the end, it was a great kind of bookend to this concept of Nuggets. And then I went and did about 10 Nuggets shows.
I was going to say, our show
all very
started
different.
the
Wild Honey show is ridiculously professional. I mean, they had a string section for the Mojo Men song, 3 drummers moving in and out. It was such then we did it at the Chapel in San Francisco. That was kind of a good rock dive, fun. Jello Biafra and Penelope from the Avengers. We did 2 nights at the City Winery with a lot of locals. That was really a good one. Played the Cat's Cradle in North Carolina and recorded it for a live record, which came out last Record Store Day, includes my famous mashup of The Letter by the Box Tops into
Alex Chilton, right?
Yeah. And
Alex
into
Chilton.
Run into Run 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 by the Velvet Underground.
I love it when
by ZZ Top. So I got that on record.
I love it when like a fact from the podcast past comes up in another thing, and I'm like, I'm learning.
I'm glad you guys did all 3 Big Star records.
And then we finished up in London at the 100 Club for 2 nights, which was really awesome. Hilarious. Rat Scabies on drums and a bunch of people. And then we
Rat
did
Scabies.
I Want to Be Your Dog, and Brian James from The Damned and Cheetah Chrome from the Dead Boys were playing guitars. So I figured, well, I don't have to play guitar. So I just sang it. I took my shirt off and did all the Iggy moves, and then I crowd surfed.
Nice.
It was totally
Nobody
fun.
had peanut butter there. You could have been Nutella.
Well, I could have, But anyway, it's been a great celebration. I probably won't be doing it anymore because I don't want to be a tribute band. And I'm starting to feel like, the sounds of the 60s. I was in a garage band once. I understand it. I love to play those songs, but really I'm more interested in my new band, which is called Adrift. It's a goth psych jam band. And
nice.
it's pretty good. It's dark and a lots of guitar solos, and it's fun. So that's my modus.
Do you have a track we could play at the end of the podcast? You could send me to
Unfortunately, we're
Jeremiah?
still a work in progress. We haven't gotten into a
Whoa.
real studio, but
You know anybody?
we're working on it. We're a power trio, and it's really fun if you want to hear what it sounds like. I don't know if you can steal the sound, but it's Adrift at Rock Hard Studios here in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, and we just went there and did a live video performance of 3 of the songs.
Oh, right
But,
on.
it's a
We'll get
work in
Suzanne
progress.
Vega to download it.
Yeah, see what you can do. But it's pretty fun, I have to say. I'm really enjoying it, and yeah, it's a new direction for me, man. Jazz Odyssey.
Keep evolving. I love that.
My World Fell Down by Sagittarius. I saw 3 L's and I was like, that's an I. This slice of early Baroque and sunshine pop has been described as the best single the Beach Boys never made, and there's some pretty good reasons why. It was written by John Carter and Jeff Stevens, and originally released by Carter's previous band after he left the Ivy League. The Ivy League were British but inspired by the Beach Boys, and when Beach Boys producer Gary Usher heard it, he thought it would be perfect for Chad and Jeremy, who he was producing. When they turned it down, he put together a studio band called Sagittarius to release it as a single. Along with Usher was producer Terry Melcher, Doris Day's son, and infamously and indirectly the reason that the Manson murders happened. Rounding out the lineup were touring and occasional recording members of the Beach Boys, Bruce Johnston and Glenn Campbell, who sang lead. They would both go onto considerable success. After the single did well, the record company obviously wanted an album and tours, so Usher kept it going with other players.
And Kurt Botcher.
It's an amazing record. Anybody who says that Nuggets is about garage rock should listen to this, because this is like about as modern a recording as can be. It's even got some weird musique concrète in the middle of it. It's a beautiful, beautiful record, and to me, that's what Jack Holzman wanted, was to find these records that were kind of off the point at that moment in time and give them a new life. And to me, that's what Nuggets is about, giving songs that I and many other people love longevity.
Were they aware when that came out that like Glenn Campbell at that point was then like a star? Like by 72, 76, so is Bruce Johnston.
This is like 66 or something.
No, I'm saying by the time this record came out, a bunch of people who probably never heard the original single were like, holy shit, this is Glenn. Like, this is the guy that's on the radio with Gentle on My Mind. And,
he's a genius.
Bruce Johnston's already done I Write the Song.
He was there with the Wrecking Crew.
Yeah.
It's all great music, and I like to see my music keep living. And so this is a way, actually, who knows what would have happened. Everyone says, I think all of this would have been discovered. And at the end of the liner notes with Nuggets, I think I say something like, now the archaeologists will filter out and find all this stuff. Mine was just like, the first cull. And yes, now they found, thousands of garage records, many of which are fantastic, and shot through with wacky genius. And, I'm just happy to do my part. In the end, I'm a fan of music. I try to promote it at all times. The fact that I've been able to make it is a great blessing. But in the end, I just want you to come over to my house and sit down and say, man, you got to hear this record. This is such a good record. And you'll enjoy it.
I love that. By the way, musique critique is a highfalutin way to say sampling. Today, it would just be called sampling.
Yeah, right on.
Just use stuff
sounds way better.
Sounds way better.
You put your pinky up when you go. Stockhausen, right. The Beatles turned on.
All right, Open My Eyes by Nas. Nas is now remembered more as the first vehicle for 70s pop genius Todd Rundgren, who wrote and ghost produced this track and its B-side, an earlier version of Todd's later hit, Hello, It's Me. Despite Todd's complete talent, Nas's lead singer was their organist, Robert Stuckey Antoni. Sadly, he passed away last year. Comments, thoughts? What do you got?
Yeah, the greatest Philadelphia band. Obviously Todd was the genius, and he would continue to mine his genius. I'm glad he's gotten the recognition. With Patti, he produced an album of ours, Wave,
Yeah.
and he was fantastic in the studio. What do you want? He had a great production philosophy. He says, if you know what you want, I'll get it for you. If you don't know what you want, I'll do it for you. And
Which is the
time
XTC.
to stack
Yeah.
vocals. Okay, Patti, sing this, sing here, sing here, sing here. And then when we wanted to record 7 Ways of Going live, he left us a lump of hash and said, have a good time, choose whatever take you like. And I always respected that. It's like, okay, just a great guy.
For those that don't know, Todd Rundgren produced the first Dolls album, the first New York Dolls album, and Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell.
That's
So
right.
we're talking about a guy with a serious, this is beyond everything else he did. Talk about like one of the first.
And let us remember,
yeah,
Grand Funk Railroads were an
Yeah.
American band.
I mean, this dude's, at his, and, Bearsville, but I mean, his wealth of production credits are like insane, beyond anything else.
A great genius.
And by the way, one quick thing about this is because they were a Cold Gems band, which was like the Monkees, they made a video for this song, which is sort of like one of those Monkees romps. They have them, in a field with chicks dancing around, but it's kind of cool. And then the coolest thing about this band is there was another band out of Arizona who decided to use the Nas because the Nas had been, a Lord Buckley phrase. And that band had to change their name because this band had a hit with this song. And they just said, okay, I guess we'll be called Alice Cooper then.
Funny how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
Well, fellas, it's been real, but I have a lawn that needs mowing, and I have a porch that I'm going to reserve that clam on the half shell for.
Rock and roll. We have one more song if you don't mind.
Okay, one more song.
It's a happening. The Magic Mushrooms.
Spray the weed, a zephyr breeze, a mushroom high above the cloud. If you read my biographical thing in the original Nuggets, you realize I completely made it up because I had no idea who the Magic Mushroom was. Not even remotely. They're living up in Pittsfield, Vermont in a head shop. I don't know. I just made it up. I actually found out that they were from the University of Pennsylvania, that Allen Ginsberg named them. And
that's cool.
And again, this is one of those random things. Nobody would have known about this record, even me, except I spend a lot of time in that year driving around in my car with the AM radio on, and late at night you could pull in WKBW out of Buffalo. And WKBW, aside from having a hilarious segment called Chicken Man, which is really funny, they played this song one night, and I thought, oh my God, what the heck is this song? And it took me a while to track it down because it's certainly not a hit. And so it was the perfect final track for Nuggets. I don't even know how to. It's a true psychedelic masterpiece, and I was glad to be able to give it a little love, which is all about what I was doing with all those tracks on Nuggets, just letting them know that somebody out there heard them and had their life changed.
The only thing I've ever wanted to ask was, and I have to, and please just say fuck off if you don't want to. When Patti brings you what's now called rock and roll N-word, I guess from ever, but she comes up to you and goes, hey, I got this thing. But to me, the moment where she screams Lenny and you take a verse, was there any incendiary sort of, this is going to be something?
All I can tell you is it grew out of an improvisation during during Radio Ethiopia. Anyone who is offended by that, please listen to the lyrics.
No, of course.
It is an anthem of solidarity, and I have no apologies to make for it.
No, and I never expected. I just wondered if at the time, because now we look at it with 2024 eyes, and it seems like, but I mean, it's such an incredible track of solidarity and of saying it's about the outside and what they made this, this pejorative into, and then, Jimi Hendrix and your grandmother. And, I think it's such an incredible track. But the fact that she did it at the Hall of Fame, or you guys did it at the Rock and
with
Roll Hall of Fame.
Aretha and
Yeah.
Reverend Al Sharpton in the table right underneath us. So
Fantastic.
hey, look, all I know is art, let us look at the poem from which it's from. Okay. And I won't say the word because
Sure.
N is not about color. It was made for the plague. The word must be redefined. Well, that's all I have to say about that.
No, that was not. I just wanted to know, because then NWA comes out, and then it just becomes.
Listen, in my gym, which I go to all too infrequently, hip hop is pretty much the music of choice, and I'm not offended. I'm like trying to lift 30 pounds, but whatever it is. Times change, mores changed. I just want people to listen to the lyrics. That's
Love
all.
it.
Dude, well, this, was such a treat, Lenny, and I can't thank you enough for coming on and talking about this. I think the Fleece Army is going to love this. Do you have anything you want to promote? You have the band, anywhere we can find anything, we can promote anything off of this?
No, I'd like people to read my book. I'm really proud of my book. It took me 6 years to write. Lightning Striking, 10 Transformative Moments of Rock and Roll. Memphis in 54, New Orleans 57, Philadelphia 59, Liverpool 62, San Francisco 67, Detroit 69, New York City 1975, London 77, the Great Metal Chapter, LA in 84, and Norway in 93, and Seattle in 91. And to me, it tells the story of rock and roll. I have no desire to write a memoir, but I was a witness to some of these things, sometimes a participant. So I make myself a minor character when I'm there. But I believe that it tells the tale of this music that has given me inspiration and illumination over, at this point, in November, it'll be 60 years since I first stood up and played a guitar in a band. And I can't believe it, but it's a great tale that I actually lived in. I was born just about the time that rock and roll was born, and I'm still trying to get past 11 on the volume knob. So it's a great thing. But I love my book. It's really obsessively detailed. I actually look at it now and I think, man, you'd be crazy. What are you looking at? But it really tells the story of rock and roll's evolution. And, to me, in a certain way, rock and roll at this point has made its statement. And now it becomes part of the great genres of music that you can dip in and take from, but you're not going to get a lot of forward motion. Bebop, blues, you're not going to be able to play the blues differently unless it's not the blues. Dixieland jazz, romantic piano music of the 19th century. All of these great genres that are there for the taking and the listening and the innovation. I believe it tells the tale of the music from start to finish, and I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of the writing. Again, there's some stuff that I look at and I think, man, that was a good sentence there. So, I would ask all your listeners to dive deep into it, and if a drift can drift your way, maybe we'll come visit you someday. It's like I said, a work in progress, but it's one that takes me in a different direction, and I'm all about different directions. I mean, I love garage rock and all that stuff, but I've played Pushing Too Hard and Gloria enough that I know them too well. I like to do stuff that I don't know, because that's what keeps you alive.
100%.
You still have the Little Steven. You still have the Little Steven underground
Monday
show.
and Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern to midnight on the underground. This from the subterranean basement of the underground garage, bouncing off the Sirius XM satellite on 21.
You're the coolest, dude. I got to do the questions because we do it every show, and I really want to know. I'll try to rephrase them as best I can. And we ask every person that comes on these questions: what's your favorite song on this record, bud?
I told you, it's
Nuggets.
the Seeds, Pushing Too Hard.
Okay, cool. Is there anything that you have on there that you're like, that probably shouldn't have been in there? I didn't.
Nope.
The least favorite? No, you love them
I
all.
love them all. They're all my children. I put them on there because I love them, essentially, for no other reason. Sometimes they're not even there for historical veracity. I like all these records. There's a couple I wish could have been on that I'm still hoping for. It took me 50 years to get 96 Tears on Nuggets 2, which was kind of amazing. I'm still hoping to get The Magic People by the Paupers on maybe Volume 3. And there is some discussion of Volume 3, but if there is a Volume 3, it's going to be kind of just weird stuff because I've covered all the main stuff, but it might be a fun listen. Who knows?
I think it would. All right, I'm going to phrase this. I'm trying to clean it up. Can a person have sex to this record?
You can have sex to any record. Depends on what kind of sex you want to have. I prefer Alan Hovanes myself, but
I don't even know what that means, but that sounded funny.
he's a great Armenian composer. Beautiful,
oh, right
beautiful.
On. I love.
Everybody rush out and grab that.
My sex is very musique concrete. And I would ask you how to sum up this record to get somebody to listen to it, but you've already done it, man.
It's a nugget. If you dug it.
I love that. That was outside of the Alex Theater on the marquee, so we could see it leaving. Said it's a nugget if you dug it.
And I have to thank Gene Thies, publicity assistant at Elektra Records, for coming up with it and giving me something to inscribe on Nuggets for the next, well, at this point, it's almost 52 years.
Amazing.
Wow.
That's insane.
So I'm just DJ Morty Coyle at Twitter and whatever the hell they call it now and all those other places. And then, the Bee and Daddy cartoons, everything, and All Day Sucker, the band. And by the way, you can find the Wild Honey version. I think they're selling the Blu-rays of the Nugget show.
Really?
I still haven't seen our clip. I'm still waiting just to see what we were like with me freaking out of seeing Lenny and seeing Wayne Kramer and the Wings.
Nuts, man. Nuts. And dude, this was just such a treat. Lenny, thank you so much for coming on, buddy.
Pleasure. Thank you, Jam. Thank you, Marty.